I would like to begin today's conversation by starting it off with Chris Gray, who is our lobbyist, and he's going to give us a little bit of a government overview of all the things that have come out today, and take it from there. So Chris, when you're ready, please.
All right, thank you. So everyone can hear me, I hope. I do apologize off the top. I only have about 20 minutes, so I'll try to go fairly quickly, but there has been a lot of things happening and a lot of information flowing, and Tricia has done a fantastic job, in my opinion, letting everyone know what is happening in a timely fashion. So two things I did want to touch on were the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program and a short update on the wage subsidy program. And then maybe we can open up the questions. And so let's start with the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. So yesterday during his daily briefing, the Prime Minister mentioned that he will be working with the provinces to roll out the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program for small business. Details were fairly light on the program, but it will eventually provide loans and forgivable loans to landlords and property owners who will be in turn ordered in some fashion, again, in conjunction with the provinces, to put that towards the small businesses for the months of April, May, and June. So because this does require the provinces, a partnership with the provinces, the Prime Minister basically said more details will come from this soon, and they are working diligently to connect with each province and have them come to the table so that they can support small business and have this rolled out as soon as possible and as effortlessly as possible. So further to that, I've had a number of calls this week with Finance Minister's office and the Minister of Small Business, as well as the Retail Council, to see what was coming down the pipe as it led up to this announcement yesterday. And so I think it's very good news. Tricia and I had a call with an official in the Minister of Small Business's office today. So she provided a little bit more information, and Tricia, feel free to jump in, but she did say that engagement with the provinces would be key. And she said that the things that we could do are continue to do outreach towards MLAs and MPPs in the provinces to get them to buy into this program quickly and get and engage with Morneau's office and Mary Ng, who's the Minister of Small Business. So that is kind of that in a nutshell. They did say, as we've been working with Dave diligently as well, they are very familiar with the Australia model, and they are continuing to think about different options as this will roll out. I expect that we'll see more on this early next week. So Tricia, is there something that you want to mention?
Yeah, so when we started the lobbying just a couple of weeks ago, I had sent out a template letter that individuals could use as a template when they're reaching out to their MLAs and MPPs. What we're going to do is create a brand new letter that is more structured towards what our wants are, and then we can get all of our provincial council members or everybody who's on this team here to send that letter to their representatives, and that way it'll be kind of an easier scope for everybody to do, as well as more targeted to exactly what is wanted. And I see that Scott has asked some questions here on the side here. Which provincial minister or MLA would we speak to? So MLA is going to be your MLA in your region, and then provincial minister is finance. So yeah, it's going to be all around the finance, correct, Chris?
Yeah, no, that's right. And sorry, I can't see the question, so thanks for relaying that. But that is correct.
Yeah. And then Scott also mentions we should arrange a campaign and have a provincial council member. Yep, absolutely. And then will this also impact property tax, as that is municipal? Should our members advocate to their city council directly?
So when we talked with Ivana today, Tricia, she did say, well, again, it was light on details, but she did encourage reaching out to municipal officials as well. I would start with provincial MPPs, MLAs, but definitely putting this on the tables of local councillors and mayors is definitely a good idea as well.
Do we have any more questions on this matter?
It's Angela. Just a comment. Vancouver has said they have deferred property taxes now till October. It was originally from July to September, but now to October. And they have asked the province, and the province is, we are waiting for the okay, a 25% reduction in the property tax is expected to come through. And the instructions would be in the property tax notices coming out in May.
Okay. That's good. And when we did speak with the minister's office today, as much as the federal government wants to do this and is committed to doing this, it is very important that the provinces come to the table. So any encouragement that organizations like ours and others like the Retail Council can apply to the provincial officials to get on board with this and to support it is much appreciated by the feds.
And quite hi Scott, it's Dave Hardy. Angela, it's great news that someone's talking about 25%. I mean, essentially, property tax is really the total cost of running a city allocated between residential and commercial tenants. And non-essential tenants, if they're mandated to close for public health, I have trouble seeing how just a 25% reduction is enough. I think that it probably should be more, and I think we'll have an opportunity to make our case for that. I think we're better to, as I've said to Scott and Tricia, I think we're better to wait a little bit and see what the rent opportunities are, because that's the bigger fish to fry for most of us. But I think the next real big fight we're going to have is non-essential businesses, because it sounds to me from what I'm hearing in the U.S., you're going to see some small retailers open that have, where you're at maximum allowed to have 10 people inside your locations. There's going to be a lot of gyms that may not be in the first wave of openings. And so I think you're going to have to treat different businesses differently.
Yeah.
I have one more question to Chris. Chris,
sure.
The information you have so far on the rent, commercial rent, is that supposed to be in a form of so far you understand now, in a form of a loan to the landlord, or is it just, if it's a loan, I mean, it's not really, the landlord is some landlords are in the same position as the business, as it's their income.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Yeah. No, sorry, Angela. No. So what I do know so far is that that is the aim of the program. It says the program will provide loans, including forgivable loans, to commercial property owners.
Okay.
Who in turn will lower the rent of small business for those months. So somehow it has to be. That's where the province comes in, where they have to mandate in somehow the property owners to implement that.
Well, and those of us who have already should be lucky then.
Who already have paid, you mean?
I have a separate company which owns the commercial space where the business is in. So,
Oh, I see. Okay.
so as I gave myself the rent already for the next couple of months.
So you wear both hats then, okay?
Yeah, I wear both hats.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, I mean, I think overall this is good news. I just, as I said, we're light on details, and as the Prime Minister has done with other announcements like the wage subsidy program, he has been announcing that it's coming, and here's what I'm envisioning. And for all we know, this, as Ivana said again today, these things can evolve and changes can happen over the next week or two as they start to flesh this out a bit more. Okay.
Could
there's
we,
no more questions. Yeah.
well, I had a question. You know, you have the
Sure.
small business loan applications out there for the $40,000 where the $10,000 is forgivable.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you're a small franchisee, but if your payroll is more than $1.5 million, you can't apply. And I was wondering if there's a way to talk to the government and talking about locations, right? Like, let's say you had multiple locations, and you could, if you could qualify for that loan under each location. I asked for Saskatchewan because they had a $5,000 grant or a bursary in Saskatchewan, and I told them $5,000 really doesn't mean much at a company our size. And what I was able to get them to do is the government official told me, she's like, why don't you apply for each location separately, which we did, and we put in our application, and let's see what happens. But could we ask the federal government to do something like that, where it seems like we're some businesses like ours, we have 9 locations, too large to qualify for anything substantial so far, and not small enough to qualify for other things, and it's just like, for the lack of a better word, falling through the cracks, right?
Yeah. No, I don't know the answer to that right now, but they are very open to input and ideas. I know that. So I don't know if, Tricia, you want to kind of compile any kind of points that come out of this call that we can move forward on. I'd be happy to press that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. And if there's anybody else who is on the call that kind of falls into a similar situation, I see Mo nodding there. Yeah, absolutely. We can connect, and you can let me know what your specific situation is like, and then we can bring that forward.
Yeah, and even a short case study, as you just illustrated, would be good.
Yeah, like, for example, we own a couple of our properties out of the 9 clubs. So the BDC program all of a sudden doesn't apply, because if you're past $10 million, you don't qualify. If you have more than $10 million in lending, and 2 mortgages put you over that easily, all of a sudden you don't qualify for any lending through the small business loan backed by the government through the BDC either, right? And so it's easy to fall through the cracks really quickly, just because the way they're set up. And so if we went down to each location for each business, it would make it a lot easier and a little bit more fair as well, where more people could qualify.
No, that's good. It's good intelligence for the government to have. So again, if you or Tricia could just compile that, and we could get that to them as soon as we could, that would be great.
So what I can ask is, if anybody falls into a little bit more of a unique situation such as that, let me know, kind of send me like a little bit of a testimonial and kind of a story explaining your situation. And I think that's the best way to approach your story and your situation.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And just for the sake of time, I will just briefly touch on the wage subsidy program. Tricia, I think you circulated an article that I had, or at least I flagged it. But the first payments are expected from that program by the first week of May, and online applications will open on April the 27th. With an expectation to be processed 90% of those claims by May the 4th. So that's what the minister told the House of Commons Finance Committee yesterday. So that's a bit of an update on that.
Has anybody? I have a question to that because I have to have this stupid My account at CRA, and unfortunately, they asked me for my they asked for my social insurance number and my birth date. So I assumed automatically when they asked for the postal code that they wanted my postal code. But unfortunately, in this case, because my accountant does my taxes, they wanted the accountant's postal code. So after several tries, they knocked me out, and I can't access this now. So they said we can start calling anything but the CERB program by Monday again. I will try this afternoon. Hopefully, I get it going. Has anybody ever had any experience with that? What to do? Nope.
I can say that for the CERB one, I called in and it took 3 minutes. It was really quick. I don't know about that one. So hopefully it'll be the same thing for that one moving forward with next week. But the CERB one was just as fast by telephone as it was online. I had some similar issues with the CRA account entry, and it went really, really smoothly by phone. So. Okay,
thanks. Well, I don't know about other provinces. I did yesterday mine with the hydro, and that was extremely smoothly. I just had to upload the email that we closed, account number, and we will not be charged for, as far as I know, 3 months now. So that was help.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Chris, did you have anything else you would like to add?
I don't think so. It's been, as I said, it's been a fast-moving week here in Ottawa on that file, and I anticipate, as I mentioned, things will continue to unroll or unveil themselves next week. So again, feed Tricia and me through Tricia any kind of comments that either issues you're having or questions you have. I'm happy to try to get answers for you.
Okay. So I know you do have to leave. So if there's any last questions for Chris, we can just. I
had a quick question. Anyone can help me. It's a little bit unrelated, but on the wage subsidy, partners who are taking a dividend, I think I was on a webinar with my accountant and understood that if you're paying a regular dividend, that would count as wage, or am I wrong in reading that? If anyone has any help with that, that'd be great.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that, but we could find out.
That would be great. I did. As far as I could tell, it feels like if you're paying yourself a dividend in lieu of a wage from your company, then on the wage subsidy past and going forward, it could apply. But I have to verify that with my accountant, but I thought maybe if someone else had, I could ask.
Okay.
Quickly, Chris, before you go, now they're saying people can earn up to 1,000 now and still get the 2,000. So I just wanted to confirm that, and that applies to, in the example that we've got here, which is hiring trainers back or trying to get some trainers rolling again and at least getting the revenue started. So if they are getting the CERB and they start making an income that's less than 1,000, they can still make that income and get CERB, and then it's a matter of getting that revenue and that income to a point where the trainer's making over 2,000, that they leave CERB and start working, directly for wages again. Is that more or less a correct interpretation of that update?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Allows that transition a lot easier as things start rolling in, as we start to see training revenues and starting to get some trainers working back again, that there's that sort of threshold they can earn up to 1,000, and then continue to build over the 2,000 before they leave CERB too. So that helps.
Yeah. Okay, I have to drop off. So thanks to everyone, and Tricia, I'm sure we'll touch base.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, take care.
All right. So we will now move on to our next item. Dave, if you are there, could you maybe touch on the idea of connecting with a PR firm and what we would be using them for? Dave, are you around?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not used to using Google Hangouts. I'm having trouble finding the mute button. We've been talking a little, well, I guess from a history perspective, bringing on a government relations firm, and Chris is doing a great job of addressing, working with us on government and pushing us through. And I think, I'm not sure we can take all the credit for it, because I suspect the Retail Council and a lot of other groups have been pushing hard for this. But as we talked about early on in this, Scott and Tricia, we all felt that there's going to be more pressure as the next rental date starts coming closer, and landlords started very aggressively with pushing hard for rents, and even in the last week they've kind of slowed down after what we saw happen in places like Australia. There's been other countries as well that have had rental programs. Denmark, for example. They can get 80% of their regular expenses, such as rent, covered by the government. Singapore has the same thing where they're doing this. The United Kingdom has one that they're proposing that essentially landlords would either effectively forfeit, they couldn't take over locations. So there's more and more that's coming. And my understanding is a number of the landlords have sort of heard that. So I guess without rambling on, because I'm kind of rambling, we expected there to be something coming in rents, and it does sound like it's coming quickly. The next shoe to drop is going to be, as I said, property taxes. In terms of getting a public relations firm on, I think that our industry would be well received. And a week ago it seemed like there wasn't anything coming yet for Canada. There was a number of organizations, Save Our Businesses, for example, that had started to do petitions. And without getting into the fight, it looks as though it's sort of been pushed across the line just with the government relations work. In terms of the next one, which I think is going to be property taxes, and especially since so many of the Fitness Industry Canada members have very, very large spaces, if you take a look at what's happened in property taxes over the last 10 years, they've had a disproportionate growth in terms of the cost. And really what that's been is municipal governments have been pushing, instead of, they're elected by the people, and instead of telling people that their residential taxes are going up 2%, they tell them they're only going up 1%, yet they're raising business taxes by, in some cases, 10 and 20% a year. So there's been a disproportionate push towards business taxes. And in talking with some of the large club chains, I talked to Patch about this, there are some of the locations that he has where his business taxes, or property taxes, pardon me, are actually higher than his rent. And so in our cases, and I know in downtown Toronto, for example, it's not uncommon for us to see $10 or $15 square foot property taxes. And so, what I heard today from Angela, which is great, is the city of Vancouver perhaps looking to reduce that. I think that should be the next push for us, but I think we should be waiting until we get some response back from the government on rents, and we kind of have that done, because the reality is it's a municipal issue in terms of taxing, which means that the provinces are going to somehow have to fund them, and they may not be wanting to push as hard on rents if they know that's the next ball that's going to drop. So I guess that's a long overview of the story, which is, yes, I think we should retain a public relations firm. I think that we should have them have a supportive press release right now for the program as soon as it comes out from the government, or if it needs some tweaking. It does look as though the government is listening, and they will make changes. It might not be a bad time to highlight what they've done in other countries to sort of encourage them to do even more. And really push the fact that that we know that banks are prepared to give 6-month interest and principal deferrals, and not all non-essential retailers should necessarily be treated the same, because others that like us, where it's not as easy to do social distancing, or for that matter even movie theaters, may have to have a different program than perhaps a restaurant that can do more of that. But either way, I think we should have our messaging once we see what comes out from the federal government by the provinces on legislation that way. But I do think the next big fight that we should really be preparing for is the property tax one. Either way, I do think bringing on a public relations firm for the industry is a good thing. I just don't want us to be too vocal I think that, you know, we don't want to be the ones leading the fight. I think we want to be the ones in the fight.
Just curious, Dave, if and maybe this is a more universal question, but if we do bring on a PR firm for the industry, would we also think about doing something that's public facing, i.e. get a message out in general to the Canadian population about supporting your local gym, your local fitness professional, given the challenges, given how, the need for activity and fitness and health and how that's all related, and obviously everybody, I think, is aware that gyms are facing a particularly tough thing. Like they know restaurants, gyms, they all kind of go in the same vein here. Would there not be something about maybe collectively sending a message out to just the Canadian public in general about, hey, like, you know, I know there's lots of free content out there as you're working at home, but look at supporting your local gym, your fitness professionals, help the industry, you know, keep moving forward for when we do reopen, something along that line.
I can tell you, we did a program in the States for Orange Theory, where we asked our members if they would be prepared to buy packages in advance or continue to pay their membership dues. We decided not to do it in Canada, and part of the reason our concern was is we've laid off, you know, most of our staff in Canada, and you know, in Canada we thought that there would be we might have some negative backlash if it was sort of perceived that we weren't keeping them on, or if we were receiving money and we weren't in fact paying that money through to the people who were working for us, but we were instead using it for business expenses. In the States, that probably goes a little better. By the way, it didn't work out particularly well in the States. I think the average studio earned, it was only it was a small amount of money, hundreds of dollars, not, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. So it wasn't a big program. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of our franchisees opted out of it. It was more of a trial. I think unless we are figuring out a way to pay our staff, I think we want to be careful with that, because I think most of our members, and depending on obviously the type of business, typically have an affiliation with their staff, and they you know, if they're all laid off and the business is just taking money for themselves, it may not be perceived as well. That's just simply my experience. Everyone else may have a different experience. Speaking as an industry, I'm not sure the industry association, you know, we've tried before with the adult fitness tax credit, using gyms as the point to reach out to our members and to get them to send postcards in. I mean, that was back 10 years ago, Tricia. I can't remember, I think it was almost 1 million postcards went to the Minister of Finance. That was easy to do. I'm not sure, there's just so much noise out there. I'm not sure we'd have to spend an awful lot of money to make it happen. I think it's almost better off coming from individual studios when they can get PR hits, which, you know, you've seen a lot of that happening. And that may be something that might be able to be done from a public relations perspective, but I almost think that's better to be done on a local studio by studio basis. And Tricia, maybe working with the PR agency, you could put together a media kit. So local gyms could go out to their local media and try to bring some attention to the industry and the hardships that we're facing.
And maybe that's the exact message, right, Dave? Which is, hey, you know, most of the fitness industry had to be laid off temporarily as we closed our doors. We want to get them back working again. So that's the exact message. Like, help support your local gym. Look at how you could get support packages, programming to get more fitness professionals back to work.
Yeah, and I think that's something the industry association we could easily do. You know, Tricia combined with the PR group, but that makes sense.
There's a lot of complementary content out of there, but more and more facilities are moving to digital subscriptions of some sort, whether that's classes or training. So I think there is some merit in a kit where at your local level you can advertise that and promote it and encourage people to support it. So, which is a way to recall people from layoff and employ them again, especially in light now that you can earn $1,000 on CERB. I think that's something that we could really look at.
I see there's a question here from Jeff. He is asking, can employers still claim wage subsidy if rehiring an employee making less than $1,000 per month, but still on CERB?
Too bad Chris left. I don't know if anybody else knows the answer to this. My understanding is the wage subsidy is not tied to each individual employee. It's a relationship between the business and the government. But I think I'd want Chris or somebody who has more in-depth knowledge with this to answer.
So Jeff, what I'll do is I'll take your question and I'll send it to Chris, and then we can give everybody the answer to your question from there.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so let's move on. And the next item is reopening agreement from Quebec. So we have Renew from Econo Fitness, if you are on the call, which I believe you are. If you would going over your ideas for what a reopening agreement would look like.
Yes, thanks, Tricia. Yeah, so the idea that I had was to regroup the gyms in the Quebec province to do advocacy. So I was speaking with Claire Tremblay yesterday, and she was sharing the story about the mechanics here in Quebec that regroup as an industry and made their rules and regulation for their industry and did representation to the government to get approval and be reopening, and this work. So now the mechanics are all open here in Quebec for to do their work, and that's an idea that could work for the fitness industry as well, if we can regroup and tell the government here's what we'll do to ensure the safety of our employees and members, and why we are important for the people, and so that was the main idea. I was thinking about this in a provincial perspective, so I'm not sure how it works in the rest of Canada, but here in Quebec, we see that the provincial prime minister has the hands on the wheel, and the provincial government is making the decision, and they are already in a reopening mindset right now, and we wouldn't like to be the last one to open because we are not top of mind on their for the government. So basically, yeah, what I would like is to regroup all the Quebec people that are on this call. I saw Charlie, Sam, Claire, Evelyn, Natalie, and see how in a provincial perspective we can work with the government to make our representations. And
so Renaud and Trisha, it's Nathalie. Yeah. So I had the opportunity to speak with both Renaud and Claire yesterday, and I think what we'll do is try and have a French call next week and get everybody, as many of them together as possible. I know there are concerns from the smaller studios versus low cost versus the traditional gyms, and what that means of relating in particular to capacity. I think that's the great concern, is what capacity we can hopefully all come to a consensus makes sense, because the capacity for low cost for profitability would be very different than for studios that do have group fitness, that don't have group fitness. And so I think there might be a concern of making sure that whoever participates in this is within a form of consensus that they've run their numbers, and for them, those insurances are there. But like Renaud said, so they're changing tires here again. They're taking off winter tires because the mechanics got together. The garden center is opened yesterday with very specific parameters around how they were doing it, and so I can appreciate the desire to be included in that. And it seems that the associations or the unions that got together and they took initiative and brought those strategies to the government and said, here's what we're willing to do. We are therefore ready as soon as you give the green light. They're moving forward on those ones. And the number of associations and organizations are getting lined up now. And so to Claire's point, who Claire from Énergie Cardio spoke to a lobby firm here, they said, like, you better get your ducks in a row because the list is long before you guys get looked at. And so I think the initiative is to at least have the conversation and start to say, here are the things that we can do, and here's a bit of an agreement, and here's all the different companies, different organizations and studios and gyms via FIC, and here's what we are prepared to do. Please, can we get the green light when you guys are ready to do so? So we're going to try and have a call next week and pull people together through FIC. Is that it seems to be better heard when it's from an association versus obviously individual companies and organizations.
Yeah, thank you. And it seems that things have a tendency to start from Quebec when it comes to this. So it's a nice place to have a team kind of develop a program.
Are there any concerns? I mean, obviously, everything we'd send through to FIC for that. Are there any concerns of a conversation starting with Go Quebec? Scott says, merci, Scott. Go ahead, baby. Are there any concerns of Quebec just, trying this out again, because there is a reopening happening, and seeing what we can do and communicating that back to you guys? I don't know in terms of lobbying. I did ask Trisha if the lobby firm did offer bilingual services. I know they're focused on the federal level, not on the provincial level. So we'll need to see in terms of any lobbying funds, if anything's available for FIC, or if the clubs will do this on their own. Is there anything that you guys want to share with me before I try and schedule a call with a new Frenchie group next week?
Natalie, can I ask a question? Julian here.
Yep.
Are you looking at lobbying so that the clubs are in the first phase of reopening, or is it in terms of the restrictions that might be imposed?
I mean, I would say both. Like I said, there are, because the reopening seems to be very industry specific right now. Like I said, it was mechanics to take winter tires off cars, and garden centers seem to be the first two. Oh, and residential construction for homes that were meant to be delivered by July 1st. So I believe those are the three that have popped up, but they feel very random. And from what Claire explained to me yesterday, from the lobby people she spoke to, it seems to be it's because those are the associations that went to the government and said, we're ready to go. So they've gotten their ducks in a row, and they say, we can actually start doing something. And so it would be open version 1, I guess, is kind of what the plan is, to put something together. I think if Lynn from Énergie Cardio went to a garden center or looked into it, and a lot of those parameters seem to match. And so we can start at least to have the conversation so that something can be done, so that it's essentially the ducks are in a row from the industry versus the government saying, hey, gyms, when you open, you can only do it at 20%. For the industry to actually say, well, when we are ready to open, it'll look like this based on the square footages of the clubs, and we will do this, we will do this, we will do this. So it's to take the initiative and to be proactive versus wait and see till the government decides to talk to us. Does that answer your question, Killian?
Yes, that's good. And the reason obviously asking, I saw Scott put up in the chat there, obviously mentioning the USA announcement last night that gyms will be in the first phase of reopening, but obviously each state governor will have the authority, but I don't know if anyone's seen the rules that Utah have put in some of the counties where gyms have reopened.
So, I mean, in whichever way I can, or somebody can get access to that, I'll happily read it over and send it to the group so we can see what is happening elsewhere. We've been looking at what is happening here. I mean, if you think about residential construction, I find it hard to believe that they've got, and they did say, the unions did say, they have no idea how, because certain things in residential construction are two-person jobs. So they're not sure how they're going to maintain social distancing, but it seems to be okay to figure some of this stuff out as you go. But we just want to try and get things as organized as possible.
Yeah, just to let you know as well, Tricia's aware a little bit from Wednesday evening when we had a Global Federations call, but I can give you an exclusive update from today. WHO at the Global Emergencies team have actually agreed to work with us in terms of trying to get some global guidelines out. So we're not looking at it being like saying you have 100 square feet or anything like that. It's to get at least some general guidelines that WHO would be behind. So I can't give you a timeline, but we have a meeting with the team on Tuesday, and hopefully we can progress that fairly quickly. So we'll obviously share that as we go along, and hopefully that will help as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Nazar just sent me, Scott sent me something by email, and Nazar sent me something by LinkedIn. So in terms of the health department and what's required in the square footage and everything else. So I'm gonna try and pull all of that together and work with, because I know Evelyn and Claire from Energy Cardio, as well as Renaud from Econo Fitness, have already done some work. So we will see where we go with that, and obviously include Charlie or Dave from the franchise model and Sam from the studio model, and try and get as many different voices there as possible to see if we can come up with some strategies. So stay tuned, I guess, is where I am with that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan. Thank you.
Yeah, and I
Thanks,
can say
Nat.
from our end, on the franchise side, I agree completely. Taking a consolidated approach, going to government and providing the rules to them is a lot easier than having them provide the rules to us. For example, some studios may, in Shanghai, they cap the number of people that can be in any location at 10. Our studios are built for 12. It doesn't seem like much, but you still get 6 feet of social distancing, whether you have 10 or 12 people in it. So I think we want to be careful how the rules are written, or they're going to write them for us. Right.
Thanks, Dave. We'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, and that was actually something that came up in my call today or this morning when we spoke with the small businesses, Office of Small Businesses, was they would much rather have us provide them with proposals that they can go through themselves and then make adjustments if they need to. So that's a great place to begin. All right. So the last item I have on the list, I can throw it over to Scott, and it's just any follow-up or questions that you may have in general, just kind of like a question answer period of things that are on your mind during this time.
I personally don't have questions, so if anybody else does, we'll try our best to answer them. And if we don't know, we'll try and get them answered for next week.
It seems like everybody seems to be satisfied today.
Great.
Hey, Sam here from Montreal. So there seems to be an uprising of a lot of these petitions going around online, new groups coming together, more frontline people, I'd say, less business owners from what I can see all over social media. I know we've been approached personally through our social media. I'm seeing other people approaching me personally. Do we have a general messaging that we can be sending to these groups to say, come and pair up with us, come and work with us, or see what we're doing? How should we be kind of approaching this? Do we want to let it go for now? Do we want to work with these people and team up with them? Just wondering if you have any feedback on that.
So I know one of the things we appreciated with Chris's approach was partnering with the other industry associations to have more of a unified voice. Are you referring to kind of in that lines, or are you referring more, Sam, to the, you said kind of frontline workers? Who actually is approaching you?
So both. I got one request was from specifically small business, from, I'll pull it up, sorry, small business group here in Quebec specifically who reached out to us that they were working on a petition here specifically in Quebec. The other one I had seen was actually a group based out of Toronto where it initiated, and it was owners, instructors, trainers, and they kind of created this kind of following in this group on social media with
Absolutely,
a petition on change.
Yeah, we should definitely be inviting them to join this group as a collective. I think we're much stronger. So they might not know that we exist. So I think anytime we get those kind of factions that have created organically, we should be inviting them to join the FIC. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, so Sam, what I would suggest is if you do get contacted like that, not only to invite them, but just kind of if you can give a little bit of an introduction to who we are, because I think our biggest issue a lot of the time is getting recognized by clubs. And this is what we do. We lobby for the government. So it's important for people who don't know who we are to be introduced to who we are. And unfortunately, this is the best time to do it for us. So I see that Jeff here has another question in the chat box.
So if you're looking to recall employees, you know, each individual business, I think you need to look at your strategy. Are you doing it all at once? Are you doing it in waves? One of the things that, you know, I can just share that we're doing it in waves to make sure we integrate people properly. And when we recall somebody, obviously we don't want them to make less than they're going to be making on CERB or EI. So we really need to now look into that. If they're on CERB, can they make $1,000? How does that work? I know after 30 days of being on EI, you can earn part-time income and you have your EI reduced. So yeah, many won't be motivated to come to work and make less money, but the government's also been very clear that this is not to be, CERB is not to be treated like a holiday, a government-sponsored holiday. So, you know, I think those are, you got to look at your employees and your relationship with them. You know, but now I think having the ability to earn part-time income is really beneficial as you're recalling people.
Great, thank you. If there are any other comments? Well, as it seems like we have all gone silent, maybe this is a good time for us to end the meeting.
Okay, well, thanks again, Tricia, and best to all of you from Vancouver. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Tricia.
Doing a great job, Tricia. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Scott.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia. Thanks, Scott. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia.